Right. So one of my all-time favorite topics in what we are permitted and forbidden from saying, this category of not quite Leshon Hara, but maybe a Leshon Hara. Famous expression in the Gemara, Gemara describes the official cause of death of your average person. And the Gemara says very plainly, Rubam megazel, most people die, meaning the official decree of death is given from above because of some monetary related issues. So you took something you shouldn't have taken, you didn't give back something you should have given back, etc. Workplace maybe. Mi'utam ba'arayot. Really, it's only a minority of people, right? Most of whom work in politics, who end up being killed, or the decree for their death is officially issued because of some kind of sexual misbehavior. V'chulam ba'avaq Leshon Hara. That's the expression from the Gemara. Meaning, everybody, when it comes to money, it's inevitable that you handle money, and when it comes to weights, when it comes to measures, when it comes to amounts, when it comes to change, when it comes to time, think of today in terms of electricity, bandwidth. I mean, there's many ways that you could theoretically be damaging someone financially in such a way as to constitute theft, or at least your refusal to pay the damages. When it comes to arayot, come on, not everybody's an adulterer, not everybody's gay. To do something that would really that would justify capital punishment, so to speak, or something that would be as strict in the eyes of Kadosh Baruch Hu as Gilo Arayot would be an accomplishment. Most people don't come anywhere near this. V'chulam ba'avaq Leshon Hara. But everyone, it doesn't sound like there's any exception to this, everybody's guilty of saying something or alluding to something or indicating something without necessarily saying it. So how does Avaq Leshon Hara work? Well, if I tell you, you know what, that guy on, he's a nice guy, but he has this thing that really bothers me. You know, I can't stand his ringtone. Every time his phone goes off, it irritates me. I find it insulting. I find it offensive. He plays the Marseillaise. It just it starts a whole fight every time it goes off. So I can tell you something negative. I can tell you something I don't like, something I don't appreciate, and I can try to spread negativity about him. And that's usually the way Leshon Hara works. Avaq Leshon Hara is very often something that you can't quantify, that you can't define, that you can't... In other words, it's much slipperier, right? I like that example of the president of the Italian Football Federation. I have nothing against the Jews, just don't keep them, keep them away from me. Because they smell bad, because they want to take your money, because what is the heater? Yeah. No. So what's the concern? The concern is that although I didn't tell you what it was that bothered me, I didn't tell you what I didn't like, I didn't define for you the negativity, I led you to believe that there is such a thing. In other words, I did it without doing it. Right? I said something, I indicated something negative without explicitly telling you. So what if someone were a stenographer and he keeps records of this conversation? So I asked Shimon what he thinks about Lewi, and he said, I don't hate him. And you read this and you would say, Tov, he said he didn't hate him, what do you want from him? I mean, how much better could it get? When the reality is, he could be saying very negative, he could be indicating very negative things about him without actually saying it, without actually getting into the detail. Rekhilut is a little bit different. Rekhilut would be where this is more like the telenovela. This is where you're giving dry details, you're not necessarily putting a spin on the information, but you're doing it in such a way as to provoke either fights or negative discussions or negative perceptions. There's a few weeks ago, you have to look this up if you haven't seen it. On the Jimmy Kimmel show, they had this cute thing where they took a bunch of kids from New York and a bunch of kids from LA, and they asked them which city is better and why. So naturally, all the LA kids thought LA was the best. All the New York City kids thought New York City is the best. And so they asked the kids, what are the kids from the other town like? The other city. That's a girl from LA, and she says, people in LA are like, oh my God, let's go shopping. There's gluten everywhere. Like all these things that your stereotypical Californian really cares about, because the world depends on how much gluten is in your muffin. So you can say something like that in a provocative, derogatory way even though it's just a technical fact, even though you yourself don't have anything against these people, but comments like this could lead to problems. So, for example, Donald Trump now, he's in the public, he's in the limelight, so I can mention, he had businesses that went bankrupt. Okay, so I don't know how helpful that is in terms of information. Maybe it's germane to the conversation. Maybe we're talking about, we need as a president of the United States someone who's very successful. Well, very successful, I don't know. He had 2 or 3 businesses that folded with a lot of debt. It's not so clear. It's not illegal, but it's not it's not very flattering for him, so to speak. Fine, he's a public figure. These are public filings. It's a matter of public record. So anyone who wants can look this up. On a more personal level, if it's information that I have that you don't, or if I know that you have a certain attitude towards someone, and I come and I purposely say something, sometimes it could be even something positive you're trying to say. Someone will come to you and say, hey, listen, I happen not to like Rabbi so-and-so because he supported the disengagement from the Yeshuvim around Gaza. And I can say, who, Rabbi so-and-so? But he's an angel, he's so perfect, he was right about so many things, he helped so many people. It's almost like I'm throwing fat in the fire, like I'm waiting for something negative to come from you. So very often when people follow, the classic example of this, and there's a whole industry around like the celebrities, the whole People magazine, Time magazine, just talking about people for the sake of talking about people. Do you really care who so-and-so is dating, or who so-and-so broke up with, or why the relationship didn't work, or how broken and distraught this person must be? Nobody really cares, but it gives people something to talk about. This is the definition of Rekhilut. It's when you talk about something for the sake of talking about it, you talk about people, you get people drawn into a conversation about talking about other people, and then it doesn't ever really lead to anything positive or anything productive. It could be that you're talking about someone and you want to make some kind of a moral statement. So Donald Trump had a lot of businesses that went bankrupt. True, it's legal, but I think a lot of people lost a lot of money because of him and his investments. Okay, I can make a valid moral judgment, a valid moral statement based on public information, even though it involves someone who needs to be named. Because as we established a few weeks ago, I can't make the same point without naming him. It could well be that this information is valid, even about another individual. And just today, by the way, they were talking, I remember caught this, I was listening to the traffic. There's always interesting things right before and after the traffic report. And there's a famous celebrity who's a punk and has a drug problem and an anger management issue and a whole bunch of other things. And it turns out today he announced that he has AIDS. Right, why? Because he's crazy and because he takes drugs and because he does crazy, irresponsible things, right? So it's hard to have rahmanut on someone who has no brain, but let's presume that we were in such a, we're his big din and we're judging him. This could be the example of why you shouldn't behave in a crazy, reckless, irresponsible way, because things like this happen to people like that. Mm-hmm. So I can go from here to generalizing a lot of things. Like everyone who does this is crazy. Everyone who does that is, off the wall, or an enemy of mine or an enemy of yours. If I tell you, for example, there was a fight, there was an argument, there was a dispute, some kind of machloket, so sometimes it's helpful to know who's on what side. Sometimes it's really not. Sometimes you'd almost rather not know. So if it's something that you're actively involved in and the information is pertinent to what it is that you're trying to do, okay, I know this person holds this way and this person holds that way. I'm not going to fight with him, I'm not going to fight with him, but I need to know where it is that I'm going. You want to work out some kind of a partnership where you're proposing some kind of a joint venture, and you know that there are 3 partners and one of them is this Italian guy who hates Jews. Okay, so I'll go to the other guy who maybe is more sympathetic to it. So there's nothing wrong with me supplying you with that kind of information and telling you, this guy is not so sympathetic to Jews, and this guy a little bit more. Maybe you can talk to him and maybe it'll help. If I tell you, nothing but negative things about all 3 of them, or I give you information that's just going to be inflammatory, I'll never forget this. I was working once at a summer job in a place where this guy, he happened to be Italian. It wasn't his fault. He was born that way. But we were working in the same lab in a testing company. And the guy was going out with this girl forever. She also happened to be Italian. And one of her friends told her, this guy that you're going out with, Marzolo, is he's not really for you. Like he's
not really?
like, her friend was telling her, I know you've been going out for like 10 years, but he doesn't treat you right. He's not such a good shidduch for you. So she made some comment like this. So he was engaged. Everybody knew about it. He was really excited. And then all of a sudden he comes out and says, one of her friends has been talking to her and convinced her to call off the engagement. So he left the room. Another guy, who also happened to be tied, comes in afterwards and he says to me, that's not the first time he told that story today. The first time he told the story, he said this friend of hers, who's a Jew, expletive deleted, is the one who told her that she doesn't think we should get married. So, okay, he had a friend, she had a friend who told her, I didn't think this was going to work out as a shidduch. That's one thing. He tells me the story, I hear it, I say, okay, so, you're engaged, it didn't work out, I'm sorry to hear it. Now it comes a little bit more of a flavor to it. It's not only that he doesn't like this friend, it's that he hates her, plus she's Jewish, plus he hates her because she's Jewish. I was like, anything she said, she was going to get yelled at. And that's how the whole thing started. So this little extra bit of information really was what made this problematic. I'm saying if the guy were Jewish and anyone cared what he thought, it might have been an interesting layer of whipped cream on an already complicated cake. So sometimes you have information to convey, or you know that somebody has a sensitivity to something. You don't necessarily need to bring it up. You don't have to say this. No offense, but I know this guy, I know he did this, that, or the other thing. It's irrelevant. If you bring it up, and you know that it's going to evoke some kind of negativity, a perfectly dry, you have nothing against this person, but you know the person you're talking to has such a sensitivity, it might be a good idea not to mention it, right? By the way, I want to give you guys a classic example of this, because this is a question that I had back in the day, and I had the presence of mind to take it to a Rav, and I did what he told me. And I specifically was looking for a Dayan, and specifically for someone who was completely neutral to the topic. There was this girl that I grew up with, not super close, but probably I was closer to her parents than I was to her. I think family's a friend. Started going out with this guy, and it was a very weird relationship, and kind of secretive. And at some point, they took off and they got married without his parents or her parents being there, which was very strange. I didn't know his family at all. I just knew her because we had grown up together. So a few years went by, and then someone forwards me an article that he Googled that this guy's father was in jail. You know what happens? Jail or attempted murder or something. So you shouldn't try to kill people because you can go to jail. So this was very interesting information. Her parents were very upset that she got married and they weren't invited. His parents apparently weren't so upset because one of them was in prison and the other one knew why he was there. So
they didn't go anywhere.
So he wasn't going to go no matter, and they weren't going to get married in the prison, but they weren't going to get married outside the prison. So they got married somewhere else. They just ran away in the middle of nowhere and got married. So this information that I now have, it's pertinent, it's relevant, it's kosher, let's say, or non-kosher. Okay, somebody forwarded an article the truth. I was upset. I thought I should have, whatever. I was young at the time, but I thought maybe I should have been invited to the wedding. Okay, I didn't get invited. Who cares? Not a big deal. We've known each other for years, but whatever. So this guy forwards me the article and he says to me, "Hey, don't feel bad that you didn't get invited to the wedding. You know why you weren't invited? Because his father wasn't invited either, because he's in jail for 13 years. So, not a big deal." So then the question came up. I said, wait a second. I understand why he sent this article to me. Probably her parents, and we're pretty close, I'm sure her parents would appreciate knowing the same thing. So maybe, optimistically, this will make the situation better, because right now they're offended. They really think it was personal, directed against them. We hate you and we don't want you to be a part of our lives. And the reality is that if this was the reason, maybe it's not so personal, or at least not as personal as you think. So I spoke to a Rav who thought about it for a while, and he said, listen, I don't think, he's like, it's maybe not Leshon Hara, it's Rekhilut. It's just getting involved in the details. It's going to open up a whole can of worms. It's a Pandora's box about why is he there? What did he do? Is the whole family retarded? Everybody's crazy. This is just immoral, and why is she with him? And so I'm trying to say, don't feel bad that this happened, because there's details of the story that you don't know. And he's telling me, yeah, but it's a telenovela. It's just a soap opera. You're going to start here, she's going to look into this, they're going to find that. In the end, they found out, and it wasn't through me, but it was a very interesting situation. I'm neutral. I don't care. I'm not personally offended. It doesn't involve me. Plus, it already happened. It's not like if I give you this information now, it's going to change the fact that they're married or they're not married, or they're going to invite you or they're not going to invite you. Everybody else from the class is going to come. The question was only, does this contribute positively to the situation and maybe lead to some kind of limud zechut, like a positive judgment of what was going on? Or does it just create a lot more room for negative discussion and for complicated details, and would it actually create more animosity than already exists? And so he said, even if it's a safek, don't do it. If you were perfectly convinced, you were sure this was going to solve the whole problem, then I would say go ahead. But because it's only going to lead to more fruitless discussions and probably contribute more negatively than positively to the situation, just leave it. It's a good habit to be in, not to talk too much about people, not to give more detail than you're absolutely required to. And unless you're relatively neutral, or unless you're trying to prevent some kind of very clear and evident damage, there's no real justification for it. In this case, the damage was already done, so what's it going to help that you talk about it? Well, eventually they'll find out, and in the end they actually did. So, I meant to do a little bit more in detail, but we'll call it quits for today. We're a little bit late, and Bez Hashem will meet again next week.
Very